everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Unreasonable Odds podcast brought to you by DraftKings. You'll see another three-man booth here as we head into the divisional round for the playoffs. Of course, Julian Edlow, my co-host on the show as well, but a very special guest. We're rolling out the heavy hitters here to start 2021. We really are starting off well. Drew Dinsick, you might know him. You probably already know him on Twitter as Whale Capper. You can follow him on Twitter at Whale_Capper. Already 42,000 followers. So I don't feel like I really need to introduce him that much because many of you already know him already. But if you don't, he also is the host of the Deep Dive YouTube channel. These guys just did a breakdown of the divisional round on Wednesdays. You can go check that out too as well. Drew, really happy to have you on the show, man. Thanks for coming on.
I appreciate the invite. It's always exciting to meet new folks in the space. Love that there is awesome content growing and excited to hear what your guys' takes are on these games. I love new perspectives.
Yeah, so we're going to be going over all the NFL games, of course, all odds brought to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook. Also something special, Julian, coming up this week. The first odds boost brought to you by Julian and myself that will be on the DraftKings Sportsbook.
We
finally did it. It's been a long time coming. We tricked them. We're going to get some good odds boosts for you guys over on the DraftKings Sportsbook. Because you're listening to the podcast, we'll give you a little hint on what's coming up here. Lamar Jackson, over 100 rushing yards. The odds is going to be boosted on that one. Drew's already a fan. He's given some good hand gestures over there, but you'll be seeing an odds boost on that one. Make sure to go to the DraftKings Sportsbook. Check that one out. If you're thinking, I don't know, Steve, that might be a tough one to do. He's already done it over three times.
He did it last week. He did it last week in the playoffs. When they have to have it in the playoffs, Lamar Jackson runs the ball. But we'll get into it. We'll break down the prop itself later, yes. But I'm very excited to go bet my own odds boost this weekend. That'll be fun.
So make sure to go check that out over on the DraftKings Sportsbook as the games get closer. Of course, games on Saturday and Sunday. We're going to start with the Saturday slate. We got to start early here. Rams and Packers. That is going to be kicking off this weekend's games. The Packers 6.5-point favorites in this one. Over under relatively small. 45.5. Talk about line movement here. The Packers did open up at -7.5. Two very good teams at the over. Excuse me, against the spread this season. The Rams 10-7, 3-2 against the spread as underdogs, mostly been favored this season. Packers 10-6 against the spread, 8-5 as favorites. That was one of the best in the league. The thing where I'm kind of getting held up here is the over-under. We'll get to that in just a second here. But Drew, opening thoughts on this one. Obviously, some big questions in this one. Who's going to be quarterback first and foremost? I'm sure that's going to come into play. And then we also have a questionable tag on Cooper Kupp, who is dealing with bursitis in his knee. Opening thoughts here, Drew, my man. What do we got?
Yeah, I think I had an appetite for some Rams in this one when I saw the soft opener last week at 8.5. I was like, "Ooh, nice! They're going to get us out there over a touchdown. This is going to be good." But by the time the market limits came up and we were at 7, I kind of felt like, "Well, missed the boat on that." Don't really want to, just grab 7. I definitely didn't feel like laying 7 with the Packers because this is a nice matchup for the Rams defensively. Like they kind of, it's not going to be easy to stop the Packers from scoring 27 points. Period. No, very few teams have done. I think the Bucs may be the only team that really. The Bucs and the Vikings, the only teams that have pulled that off this season. So it's going to be tough, but the Rams do match up well to kind of create the right situational stops. And so I thought, okay, well, the Rams should have a chance. But now that we're getting the injury report and now that, we're learning more about what's going on with Jared Goff and his thumb situation, it's going to be freezing cold out there, potentially even some weather. I really don't love the idea of a guy with small hands and a broken thumb in freezing cold weather being able to be an effective quarterback. So the chances that the Rams get their team total, which is like 19.5, I think is pretty slim. They're going to need some defensive scores to get that. They're going to need some favorable field position with some turnovers or some punt returns or something. They're going to need luck basically. And so I'm going to steer clear of a Rams play in this one after all. And, fundamentally, I think you could see the Packers roll out a pretty run-focused approach. Yeah. I mean, a lot has been made this week of Jalen Ramsey versus Devontae Adams and Aaron Donald coming up against a backup left tackle. Well, if I'm Matt LaFleur, I know that. He's not going to be surprised. Like, whoa, Jalen Ramsey's really doing well covering Devontae Adams. We got to go to plan B. No, his plan A is going to be, we're going to go with a little bit more run focused approach. We're going to, take advantage where we got it. And I think you could see a pretty healthy dose of Aaron Jones and maybe even some Dylan in this one. Right. But I think rushing props is probably the right way to attack, or Green Bay, and it's a teaser. Like if you can take 6.5 down to a half point, or if it closes at 7, taking it down to 1, either way, capturing the 3 with Green Bay makes sense to me. So that's how I would approach that one.
I'm already liking how this show is going because Drew's throwing out teaser talk, and we all know that we love teasers on this show. So Drew, you are welcome back anytime. We will welcome back anytime if we're going to throw out teaser talk. Real quick, Julian, before we get to yours. So the big thing with me, I mentioned Cooper Kupp, obviously questionable for this game, dealing with bursitis. It is expected he's going to play. But what's disappointing about this too is that you talk about matchup wise, like he probably draws the best matchup of either receiver on either side in this one against Shandon Sullivan. He has been someone who's allowed a 65% catch rate, an average of 11.7 yards per receptions, where, guys like Robert Woods, they're going to be drawing the tougher matchups here. So it's going to be vital to attack the Packers in the slot. So if that means that Cooper Kupp's in there or not, we know what he can do downfield. He's a great yards after the catch guy, but that's something you definitely want to watch too. If he ends up not playing, that would really put me over the edge with liking the Packers. But Julian, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's an interesting game. Like I go back to the Rams in Seattle last week, and I dumbed it down. I took Russell Wilson -3 at home. I just thought the gap at quarterback, I capped it for John Walford because that was the guy, but I didn't really care. I honestly wanted Goff to start with the broken thumb. I dumbed it down and I took the better quarterback -3 at home and didn't think it would be an issue. And if we go into that game, like Drew's talking about, they're going to need some luck to cover this one. That if you replay the game over from where that pick 6 happened, without that happened, and Seattle just drives down the field, that game's going to be completely different. And it was the first interception on a screen pass in the NFL this season. That doesn't happen. So you want to talk about luck. That's the ultimate luck. And it looked bad. It looked dumb. I was like, what is Wilson doing? But he threw it because you always get the screen pass. It's not going to be intercepted. And it was not only intercepted, but it was returned for a touchdown, and it flipped the game upside down. If the Rams can't flip the game upside down defensively, and they do have the best defense, Donald can get in there and get pressure. Ramsey's going to be a factor in limiting Adams. But if they don't get that massive game-changing play against a quarterback in Aaron Rodgers that's playing even better than Russell Wilson, I don't see how it's going to happen for them. Now, I don't necessarily want to lay this, and especially now that it's moving to 6.5, it's scary because they want you to take the Packers because you're getting the hook there on the touchdown. What's going on there with the Rams? Can they keep it to a 3-6 point game? They have the defense. They have the defense too. I don't trust Goff and that offense to be able to move the ball well at all. I'm not going to bet the spread either way. It's 6.5. That's the teaser number. So it's really just a question of what your second leg there is going to be. So that's the big question for me. And we're also big prop guys, obviously being in the fantasy industry. So looking at those numbers, like no Dylan prop on DraftKings, which would be interesting to have, but Aaron Jones has already taken some juice on the over 68.5 rushing yards. It's at -125. That seems very fair. And then how much do they mix Jamal Williams in? Because he's a guy that sometimes gets mixed in heavily. His rushing prop, 19.5 yards. It only takes one like 10, 12 yard run from him, and you're going to get there because he'll get a few more carries and get the over. I think that's an interesting one to look at as well. So teasing Green Bay and looking at rushing props, that's where I kind of immediately go on this one.
I just want to quickly hit on the over-under. And Drew, I want to get your thoughts on this one here. We have two teams that are vastly different on hitting the over-under in these games. We have the Packers 9-7 hitting the over this year. The Rams only 5-12. They finally hit an over last week in that game with Seattle, which was the first time when
everybody took the under.
Of course, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? But that was the first time the over hit in a Rams game since week 13 against the Cardinals. Drew, when we do end up getting the announced quarterback in this one, do you think that the number is going to fluctuate at all? And is there a number where you would be comfortable taking the over on this one? Because there's always that factor with Aaron Rodgers. He could easily put up 30 points on any given game, but this is also a secondary that has been stellar. And quite frankly, I think it's a big reason why the Rams have gotten as far as they are.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. And if the Green Bay Packers defense showed a little bit more life late in games and didn't allow garbage time points, then I would say the under is a solid play. But as far as market movement, I think once we know Goff goes, I think that's built into what it is now. If there's a surprise and it's not Goff, if it's Blake Bortles or something, totally crazy, then, you could see this come down even more. But I think it's probably settled in given some fair assumptions. And, kind of in sort of the same sort of spirit as Julian's game state in the Seattle Rams game, if the Rams are playing with the deficit in this one, I don't know. I don't like their chances to win, that's for sure. Right. But I also am not 100% sure how they're getting yards in chunks. This offense is not great. I think that's a lot of the overall spirit we've seen with the unders, is particularly at home for them. Like for whatever reason, the defense plays a little bit better at SoFi. I think they were 8-0 to the under this year at home, whereas on the road, sometimes the game's gotten away from them a little bit. But I think if I had to pick a side here, it would be the under, and I'm going to be, I'm probably going to be looking for maybe a little middle opportunity at halftime, just because of how many, late scores the Green Bay defense has given up.
I don't think there was anybody happy with how the outcome of that game was last week with the Rams and the Seahawks, especially anybody who put money on that one. Because I'll tell you, I certainly wasn't. Julian wasn't. Drew, it sounds like you weren't too thrilled about that one either. Let's move over to actually, I'm sorry, Julian, did you have any closing thoughts on that game?
I mean, closing thoughts are if it does wind up somehow being Blake Bortles, then I'm rushing to bet the Packers on the spread and the Rams under on their team total without question. But from the Rams side, we're talking about like how they move the ball. Just sticking with the rushing prop, it's Cam Akers. They have to go to him, to keep it close, to grind clock, to keep Aaron Rodgers off the field. 70.5 rushing yards, and just if you're going at the Green Bay defense, going at them on the ground has been more successful this year. So 70.5 rushing yards for Cam Akers feels good unless this one winds up in the first 20 minutes of the game being Packers by double digits. It feels like Cam Akers should get the ball enough to get there. Let me see if they are rushing attempt props up yet. Rushing attempt props are up. Aaron Jones and Cam Akers are both set at 16.5 carries.
Tough number.
That's tough. If Cam Akers was at 14.5, I would say you take the over on that, and the only way you lose really is Green Bay getting off to that quick start.
All right, let's jump over to a game that all of us, I think, have a lot that we're looking forward to in this one. This is the Ravens at the Bills. The Bills, they're 2.5-point favorites. Still trying to understand why. Now it's 3. I'm really trying to understand this here. Maybe we can talk through this one. Over under set at 50. So obviously this is originally opened up at 2.5. This is now the second or third time we've seen Buffalo at 3. Once upon a time, or back on Tuesday, they're at 1.5. So if there was a chance that you were going to bet them, that was it there. You may have missed the boat on that one. Bills have been an excellent team against the spread, 11-6 overall, 7-5 as favorites. The Ravens also 11-6 against the spread. Very rarely have they been underdogs this season. Only twice. They did cover in both of those games. They won against the Colts, not even a no-brainer in that one, but they did lose against the Steelers earlier in the season when the Steelers were on their undefeated streak and actually looked like a competent team. That was way back in the day, obviously back then. This is one where I immediately when I saw the Ravens were underdogs, I'm like, that's it for me. How do you not take the Ravens as underdogs in this situation? And look, I totally get it. The Bills are on a completely different level on how they're playing. But if there's 2 ways that you can beat the Buffalo Bills, it's the 2 positions that Lamar Jackson is really involved with: run and the tight ends. That's where you're going to beat the Bills. And that's obviously what the Ravens do a lot. I don't have to tell you that they run the ball a ton. They're one of the top teams in the league at running the ball. But then when he has to throw, if he's not going to Marquise Brown, which has been his favorite target as of late, he's going to Mark Andrews. Yeah. Let me just tell you what the Colts just did to the Bills defense on both aspects. 153 total rushing yards and a touchdown on 27 attempts last week. And then the tight ends. Phillip Rivers loves his tight ends, but Lamar Jackson loves Mark Andrews. Last week, Phillip Rivers hit his tight ends for 14 catches, 136 receiving yards, and a touchdown. Literally all the ways you can beat the Bills, it plays right into the favor of the Ravens. Drew, please. I know you're going to give me the Ravens love.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with your sentiment. And, it's number one, it's interesting that DraftKings is leading the market on this Buffalo Bills sentiment. They're leading the market out to 3 here, which is fascinating. Maybe a little regional bias there, maybe a little Northeast support for the hometown Bills. We'll see. But the fundamentals of this game, your sentiment that why are the Ravens a dog? I think that's fair. I mean, it's tough to break this down, this game down anyway and not say this is a 50-50 game. And if you're going to give me plus money on a side, I'll take it. I mean, that makes total sense to me. If I had to say what am I most confident about in this game, it's probably that the Ravens are going to score points. They're going to get theirs in this one. The Bills defense is not very good. And, specifically, last week I was nervous about the Ravens largely because what the Titans do poorly on defense, where they invite you to attack them, is kind of the one thing that the Ravens are the most uncomfortable doing, with the downfield passing to the wide receivers. That's like, take them out of their comfort zone if you really want to attack the Titans' weakness. And I thought that manifests a little bit in the game. The fact that the Ravens only got to 20 points, I think is a little bit of a, proof of concept there. Meanwhile, they come into this matchup with the Bills, and the Ravens offense fits into what the Bills do poorly, like a perfect puzzle piece. And if you can get these guys with speed and movement, Dobbins and Lamar Jackson, even Gus Edwards, if you can get them into the second level against the Bills defense that doesn't tackle well, that doesn't play discipline, gap control, they're going to have no problem moving the ball on you. And, their red zone efficiency going to Mark Andrews, I'm expecting to be pretty solid here. And so the idea that the Ravens get into the, high 20s, low 30s, I think is very much in play. And so the entire handicap then boils down to, well, what can the Bills do? Are the Bills going to be able to find enough offense to answer? And at face value, they're one of the best offenses in the NFL, but so is Tennessee. And, to the degree that defense does matter a little bit more in the playoffs than the regular season, I think the Ravens do have the better defense in this game. And I'm hopeful that you get a little nerves for Josh Allen. This is, we've seen Josh Allen play 2 playoff games so far. And in both of them, he made a couple of plays where you're just like, is the moment too big for this guy? I mean, the sack and fumble against the Colts was wild. Reminded me a lot of, him with the 16-point lead against the Texans the year before, doing the weird lateral thing, which, completely flipped the game on them.
Exactly.
And, there's a chance that you get a little bit of nerves with Josh Allen, as amazing as he's been playing this year. I can talk myself into a little bit of a narrative too, that the Bills peaked a little early this season. Sure. They showed you their best stuff throughout the last half of the season. They put a lot of their best plays on tape. I don't know if they have multiples beyond what they do well in the passing game, which they've already communicated very clearly. And you have good defensive coordinators, good defensive coaches for the for the Ravens, who have, they've watched all that. They have a good idea of what the, Bills plan A, plan B, plan C is going to be here. So I'm hopeful that the Ravens defense shows out again, like they did against the Titans, and that the Ravens can get a comfortable win here, but it's going to be a coin flip. It could come down to turnovers, penalties, and that stuff is a little random, but I do think that your points are fair.
Jules?
Yeah, I mean, I can't just keep saying the same things over and over again that you guys said. That's why I like the Ravens in this game. The only bet that I have so far this week, I betted on Sunday night, I think when all the games were over, was Baltimore money line plus 135. And then it moved to 1.5, and the money line was down to whatever it was, 115 or so. And I was like, all right, I got my number. And now it's coming back. It's whatever, plus 128 on DraftKings. Like, it's right there again. I did not think we would see this come back like this. but it has. And I think the reason maybe that it has is the weather is the only thing that we haven't touched on. It could be a little messy in Buffalo, and Lamar Jackson, I saw, has never played in the snow. I don't really care. I feel like you can still run in the snow. And if that makes Lamar Jackson run more, that's good for the Ravens. It's good for our odds boost. Are we going to talk about that now? Do we even know the number?
It's to be determined. You have to go to. It's mysterious.
Okay.
You have to go to the DraftKings Sportsbook to check that out. It's a mystery. You got to go there and be enticed.
So we will have an odds boost opening before Saturday night's game of Lamar Jackson to run for over 100 yards at plus money, obviously, and we'll see what it looks like. But just looking at the props now, Lamar Jackson's at 74.5 rushing yards. That's his prop, and I'm going to take that, and I'm going to take our odds boost because in the gotta have it games, he ran for 138 last week. Yeah. And when the Ravens were icing that game, he was breaking out even more. It's how Baltimore has to move the ball in this game, and Dobbins will factor in, Edwards will factor in, yes, but those gotta have it plays from Jackson, where maybe you think about not taking off in the regular season, he's going to take off in this game because they have to have it. So Jackson rushing props are really my favorite bet in this game. We're talking about Baltimore putting up points. They didn't do it last week. They should do it this week. 23.5 team total. That feels very nice. And then Baltimore on the money line. If you want to play it safe, I mean, taking the +3 makes sense to me as well. But I really think they get this game. I'm just going to put it on the money line, honestly, and be a big Ravens fan in what should be an awesome game on Saturday night. Excited for the game. Obviously, Drew has a ton of Baltimore futures going.
Let's
Drew
go.
has a ton of Baltimore futures going, so we're all on the same team here.
Yeah. I mean, for me, real quick, the Ravens are my favorite teaser piece that you start with. If you're making any two-team teaser in this week, I think you have to start with the Ravens.
Well, there you go. There you go. You can get paid out on rather than going whole weekend, you can get paid out on your teaser on Saturday if you go Packers to win, Baltimore +9 right there.
Yeah, Drew, I don't like waiting multiple days for things to pay out. I just need that day. So I will make a case for any teaser to end that day. Even if it's one I don't feel comfortable, I need it to end that day. Are you like a multi-day sweat guy?
Steve's very patient.
Are you a multi-day sweat guy?
He's very impatient. Sorry. I have teasers going from like Alabama on Monday night to the Chiefs this weekend with an open piece, hopefully for next weekend. Drew's patient like me. Steve just wants all his money in one day. He's greedy.
It's all good. Yeah. It's all good. But for this weekend specifically, I completely agree. Sunday, I don't see a teaser leg on the board, but I like Packers Ravens a lot.
So let's squash these rumors right now. Are you a single day guy or are you multi-day?
Multi.
Okay, that's why you and Julian hooked up together. That's cool. That's fine. But yeah, truly, my two favorites are the Ravens as any start to a teaser that you want there, and then I love Gus Edwards over 34.5 rushing yards.
Ooh.
It is very much the J.K. Dobbins show, but Gus Edwards mixes in more than enough. They basically split the carries in this one, and he's been extremely efficient in that. They like using these guys both in the red zone. Like, it's almost a 50-50 split overall too. So I know Gus Edwards wasn't overly involved last week, but this is such a much better matchup for all the running backs in this one here. Like, honestly, like I look at the overs on all their rushing yards. I'd like the over on all of them.
Dobbins is 57.5.
It just seems so low. Like, you could run against this Bills run defense. So Edwards at 34.5. It's a little bit juiced up. It's at -134 right now, but I still think that's a very enticing number. I would honestly be shocked if he didn't go over that total. He's been great. Like I said, it's basically a 50-50 split. Just go back to the game logs from all throughout the season. Snap counts, carries, all basically down the middle. So I love that one too. That's one of my favorite ones that you can target as well. Like I said, a little bit of juice there, but you'll make up for it because you're going to hit that odds boost on Lamar Jackson. So what's the difference? Who cares to pay a little bit extra juice on this one? Go ahead.
What do you got? I just wanted to really quickly touch just on props since we're running through it. The other piece that we talked about, obviously, of how the Ravens win this game, Mark Andrews, both of his props are juiced to -134, but 54.5 receiving yards and 4.5 receptions. Those feel like nice spots because Phillip Rivers was going to like 3 tight ends.
Insane.
Jackson goes to 1 pretty much.
Right.
So all of that volume going to Andrews seems like those are very good numbers. And then on the Bills side, because we haven't talked much Bills side, Josh Allen's 38.5 rushing yards, but we don't have a Devin Singletary rushing prop yet. And he's going to be the guy now with Zach Moss shut down for the rest of the season. So he's more of the pass catching back that he hasn't gotten many carries lately, but he should get double digits in this game. And he's usually recently he's been under 30 rushing yards for his prop. When that opens up, how much higher does DraftKings set it? If that's lower than 40, I don't know if it will be.
I would highly doubt
at least want to look at.
I would, we'll have to take a look at that one. And then obviously, of course, Julian gives lots of plays on his Twitter account at Julian Edlow, at SBuchanan24. If you want just snarky comments, I occasionally give plays, but mostly snarky. So if that's your game, by all means. Let's move over to the Sunday games. Awesome game to kick off the Sunday game. Browns at Chiefs. Chiefs are 10-point favorites in this one. Pretty much expected on that one. Over under of 57. The Chiefs did open up at 9.5-point favorite. So not a ton of movement on that one. But, Drew, this is one where both of these teams have really not excelled from a betting perspective. Chiefs 7-9 against the spread, only 6-8 as favorites. The Browns 7-10 overall against the spread, 3-3 as underdogs. Kansas City has not been a good over team. Cleveland has. I feel like there's an obvious answer here because the Chiefs at -10, I would be surprised if this one is a close one. But if there's one thing that I can kind of hang my hat on, is kind of giving me some pause. Both teams' strengths on offense play into both teams' weaknesses on defense. You can absolutely throw against the Browns. That secondary is putrid. If it wasn't for the Titans, they'd probably be the second worst secondary that's left. They're probably the worst one left now. You can run against the Chiefs. And we know how much they like using Nick Chubb and how great he's been. Chubb ended the regular season averaging 4 yards per carry after contact. You can't bring this guy down. He's a beast. That was even a better mark than Derrick Henry. Granted, Derrick Henry was at 3.9 yards. He's right there, but he's just in that category. What are you kind of feeling for this one? Because, like I said, the Chiefs at -10 feel like the play, but if the Browns get to an early lead, they're going to be able to run against the Chiefs.
Yeah, no, there is a wide array of potential game states that make this pretty complicated. But in my gut here, I don't think a Browns upset is unreasonable. I think there is the right set of circumstances here that the Browns pull off the impossible.
Wow.
And it goes more to, well, what are the Chiefs right now? Right? People, I'm sure you guys bet Chiefs down this home stretch last year.
Of course.
Right? Yeah. They covered. They covered
what, 8 or 9 in a row out of the bye through the Super Bowl.
They were incredible, right? Anyone that backed the Chiefs last year was rewarded. That's probably, kind of locked into your anchoring of how good this team can be. And a lot of people are expecting that they're just going to flip the switch and it's going to be that team again this postseason. Well, over the last half of the regular season, we have not seen the same Chiefs that we saw last year. I want to point a couple of fingers. Number one, at the offensive line is not as healthy and not as good. Number two, the running attack is providing virtually nothing for them right now. And number three, defenses are playing them a little differently. It has kind of become a little bit of a common approach for defensive coordinators going up against Pat Mahomes to try as best you can to take away his ability to hit the home run against you. Okay. Pat Mahomes likes to drop way back in the pocket. He likes to let the plays develop downfield. He likes to let his athletes who have speed beat you because he knows he can unload an absolute, bomb of a pass that is going to be on target, 40 yards down the field. And any team that was, teams were playing him aggressively, like, okay, the way to solve that is to blitz him. We're going to get to him before enough time is elapsed to where, he can't make that pass. Well, that hasn't worked at all. In fact, throughout his career, all the blitzing teams against Mahomes have gotten torched. And then in the last 8 weeks or so, teams have stopped blitzing him. In fact, the blitz rate against the Chiefs is down to about 25%, which is among the lower, against all opposing quarterbacks. And in concert with that, in concert with the offensive line not playing as well and the running game not being there, he's taking more sacks. He's not converting third downs at the same effective rate he was previously. And in fact, over the last 4 starts he made, his EPA per pass, per dropback, is like 16th or 17th in the league. He's down there with Mitch Trubisky and, you know, some of these other guys that you would say they're just not going to make it as NFL quarterbacks. He's kind of in that mix. It's really surprising. And a lot of people that I know who are very bullish on the Chiefs long term and who are like, don't fall into this trap, man. Like, they're going to flip the switch. Like, they're going to start calling the good plays. Like, that's possible. Andy Reid might have been saving his most innovative ideas for offense for this playoff run to try to get a second Super Bowl. That's entirely possible. And I could get totally burned on this, but the Browns defense, and you're right, they can be passed on. It's a different way than the Chiefs generally kill people with the pass. They are like, okay, we'll give you the intermediate stuff. You be efficient and you can move the ball on us through the air, right? That's not exactly what Mahomes is doing. He's out there hitting home runs. And if you ask him to try to be disciplined, try to move the ball little by little, you know, granted, he's got an amazing matchup with Travis Kelce against this defense. And every third and short, third and medium, they're probably going to get a conversion going to Travis Kelce. I don't see how the Browns stop that. But over, you know, any third and long, you know, it's going to be a little bit more difficult against this Browns team, which just doesn't blitz very much. If they're true to their identity and they don't kind of come into this game with, okay, well, we're going to change it up and blitz in this one, then I think the Browns defense might be able to hold their own. And then on the other side of the ball, the Chiefs defense is fine, but they're certainly not as good as they were last year during their Super Bowl run. And you're absolutely right. The Browns offense is peaking right now. I mean, Baker Mayfield is playing at a superlative level over the last half of the season. Chubb and Hunt are a very difficult duo to really wrap your hands around. And because you've had those guys all season long, they both have fresh legs here, as opposed to a guy like Derrick Henry, who certainly looked like his legs were cooked last week. You got two guys with fresh legs in this one. So it's the path to victory is there if the Browns offensive line comes into this game somewhat healthy. My guess is that Teller and the center go, and that's important. If those guys are even limited or out of this one, then forget about it. Browns are in deep trouble. They're not scoring. But if the interior of their offensive line is intact, if Conklin can come in and make an appearance, I can talk myself into the Browns being able to score into the 20s here, which I think is going to put a little bit of pressure on the Chiefs, who just haven't looked as efficient offensively as we have expected. And I'm willing to make a bet on Browns at +10, assuming that the signal we've got from them over the last 8 weeks of the season is real, and that there's not some magical switch that they can flip and just light the world on fire, given what we've seen lately.
Julian, I had to confirm this because I was shocked. But since week 8, when the Chiefs covered that -20 spread against the Jets, they covered once the rest of the season. Obviously, the last week of the season, they didn't have their starters going, so that is in the mix, but didn't cover more than one game after week 8. Go ahead.
Yeah, they haven't been covering. I'm not laying 10 with them. But I don't. The only thing I'll say, and it's not a hot take because the Chiefs are -500. I don't see the Browns winning the game. I don't necessarily see the path. This game's weird, man. I had the Steelers and Bills teased last week, so I hate the Browns right now. That was perfectly gift wrapped. What an emotional right out of the gates win that you can get fired up for. Is this now a letdown spot early at Kansas City? Is it a spot where, because that was such a stress-free win, you can just carry some momentum? We know how the Chiefs are early in games, not that great, especially going back to even last year's playoffs. They would still cover the games, but they would get down to -3 on the live line and then still cover the -10 that they were for the game. So, this helps nobody, but we were talking about, piecing long-term teasers together. Like, I took the 9 points on Bama when this was 9.5. I took the Chiefs down to a pick 'em in three-way 3-leg 9-piece teasers. And I leave some open because I'm patient, Steve. But for betting this game, I think the Chiefs win the game. Andy Reid's coming off basically a double bye. he's going to have something ready. But I will not lay the 10, partially because I do think the Browns will have some momentum. I think the Chiefs will start slow. I think you'll get a better number in game if you like the Chiefs. And because I have some open legs with them to just win the game, I can be patient and wait and maybe get something live here. Outside of quarterbacks, this is the only game with no props yet on DraftKings. We have passing props. We have rushing props on the quarterbacks, but we have no running back receiver props. Travis Kelce, like Drew mentioned, if you're a DFS player, you see setting your lineups that the Browns basically rank last everything tight ends. And you can pay right up for Kelce. This is one where a lot of that Tyreek Hill home run production that Drew's talking about, if that's cut off, Tyreek Hill is not running button hooks and coming back to the ball. He's streaking to the end zone. And if that's not there, it's going to Travis Kelce. So I want Travis Kelce receptions. I want Travis Kelce yards, because it's going to be that type of game where I think he just has a monster game. So again, no hot take. Give me the Chiefs to win the game in like a teaser or a parlay if you want it as a piece. Wait to get Kansas City live if the opportunity presents itself. If they roll, they roll. We'll have the Kelce props, and those will be in a good spot if the Chiefs get out to a hot start, because Kelce, I think, will play a big role in that. So that's my overall approach to this game, I guess.
Quick answers only. I was saying that I wanted to make a teaser. Start with the Ravens. Which side is more appealing? Browns at +16 or the Chiefs at -4? Drew?
I guess Chiefs at 4.
That's what I'm thinking too.
What?
You're
you're getting the Browns might win the game.
Yeah, but in terms of what value you're capturing.
I know.
Getting the 7,
trying to give you
getting the 6 and the 7 for the Chiefs is value. Taking the Browns, what are you capturing? 14, 13? Those aren't very valuable numbers. So you're getting more EV if you tease the Chiefs down, in my opinion.
All right, so in that case, Julian, you don't have to answer. Drew just put you in a coffin and close it, so we don't have to go.
I agree
on that one.
I agree. I was just trying to get him to not change his mind, but at least think about it for a second.
Well, I'm not going to play either of those, but you asked me which of the two is higher EV. It's definitely
yeah. I don't think any of us are teasing this game.
Well, I mean, I would say from a value perspective, though, and I agree with Drew here. I feel like if you are going to do the 2 team, I do think you get a lot of value out of the -4 for the Chiefs, though. So if you are looking for that value piece, unless you're going to go to Packers, and get them down to basically a pick 'em, I think the other one there would be the Chiefs at -4. Would you agree or disagree there, Drew?
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, okay. That's fair.
All right, let's close out the NFL section here with Buccaneers at Saints. Obviously, we've seen plenty of memes going around about the 2 timeless wonders quarterbacking this game in this one. This is one that I'm kind of struggling with a lot myself, so I'm glad we have 2 good minds on here. Half mind. Drew's been fantastic, so I'm looking forward to what Drew has to say at least. But the Saints are -3 favorites in this one, over under 51.5. That's a tough number, I feel like. I think that's a really tough number there. This opened with the Saints at 3.5, so not much movement on this one. The Buccaneers 9-8 against the spread, 2-1 against the spread as underdogs. The Saints 10-7 overall, 9-6 as favorites. But important to note, I feel like the Saints are 7-6 against the spread, specifically with Drew Brees. We have to remember that too, because obviously Taysom Hill was in there for plenty, too much. We still see him too much. Drew, we don't like Taysom Hill on this show, so I hope you're not a big fan or anything. No posters at your house, but we're not a big fan of Taysom Hill. 7-6 against the spread with Drew Brees. What are your thoughts on this one, Drew? This is the one I think I'm struggling with the most. I feel like this could go either way, but I also feel like you can't really take into account the 2 games we saw with them already, because I feel like this Buccaneers team is not even the same team that we saw when these teams played in the first half, because especially defensively, they're crumbling. Like, they're absolutely crumbling, especially in the secondary. This is a team that you're going to be able to throw against. Obviously, Drew Brees is not the quarterback we've seen before. He's not going to take a lot of those deep shots, but he has all of his weapons at his disposal. He has Michael Thomas. He has Alvin Kamara. That's the biggest factor for me. But then also on the other side, Marshawn Lattimore has been extremely beatable this season. And if you give the Buccaneers too many ways to beat you, that's where you're going to run into trouble. So that's kind of where I've been so conflicted here. I think the line is set perfectly at -3. Take it away, man.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think my number on this is New Orleans by 3-2. I completely agree with the original line movement. Anyone that got Tampa Bay at plus 3.5 made a good bet. I don't think it's going back. And you know, your points are all reasonable. I'm a little I would point to different reasons that the first two games are not a great indication. The first game, the Saints won. If they don't win the turnover battle, they're 3-0. They lose that game. Their offense stunk. Their defense played fine, but if they don't come away with the takeaways, then they lose. In the second game, you had no Ali Marpet, who is a hugely important player for the hugely important player on the offensive line for the Buccaneers. And you know, without Marpet in the game, Tom Brady was pressured up the middle constantly, and the Buccaneers offense was useless. And at full strength offensive line last week against the Washington football team did great. And the Washington football team didn't have the best rushing, pass rush scheme. I thought they needed to come at Brady up the middle and try to get there quicker. They didn't. They went with the sort of, we're going to rush around the edges and get to him. And the ball was gone by the time they got there every single freaking time. I think the Saints are smarter. I think the Saints are going to have a better scheme. They know exactly what to do against Tom Brady. This is not a surprise. Anyone who's been watching football for the last 20 years knows if you come at Brady up the middle and generate pressure, you're going to disrupt him. And I think the Saints are going to try that. And I think that it has potential to work. Now, Marshawn Lattimore also has, for whatever reason, just been an absolute beast in his career matching up against Mike Evans. I don't know what it is between those two guys, but he has done well covering Evans. So that's a positive for the Saints. And then, as you mentioned, with Michael Thomas out there with Kamara at full strength, the way they're integrating Harris now in the passing game, Emmanuel Sanders as a nice third option. And then, Latavius Murray as a change of pace back. Yep. All of it is, and Sean Payton is the better coach, better offensive mind, better play caller, better play sequencer, in my opinion. And if he calls this game aggressively, if he knows, that they're going to need to score and put pressure on this team to win, I think the Saints get it done and move on to the NFC title game. I don't have a strong opinion on what Brady and that, embarrassment of riches from an offense is going to do here. Brady has obviously been lighting the world on fire over the last handful of weeks, but he's gone up against some pretty weak defenses. Yeah. So there could be some, a little bit of potential the market is overreacting here and giving Brady a little too much credit. We'll see. But I would lean Saints advance, but I don't have a solid angle to play here.
Yeah, real quick, just before I get to your take, Julian, I'm glad you mentioned the thing about Brady being under pressure, because overall during the regular season, he was only under pressure on 24% of his dropbacks. So when he was under pressure, his adjusted completion percentage was at like 51.7%. Just to kind of put that into perspective, that was in the same range as Carson Wentz, who is no longer a quarterback, by the way, and Drew Lock. Like that, he was near the bottom of the league in that scenario. So getting pressure on him has been one of those keys for teams to find success, but they also haven't been able to do it on a more consistent pace. Julian, what do you got there?
Beating Brady in the playoffs has been getting pressure on him since like the first Giants Super Bowl that they lost. Like, yeah, that's how you do it. And nothing has changed in the last 15 years. So that's what the Saints need to do to stop this offense in this game. Washington wasn't necessarily able to do it, but they had a shot to win that game. They were probably closer than they should have been. So that's not encouraging for Tampa in my mind. Just looking at Tampa's season isn't all that encouraging in my mind. And I have, I got in early on some Bucks futures right when we started hearing the Brady rumblings at like plus 1,800 to win the NFC, over plus 3,000 to win the Super Bowl. So I'm going to need to do some hedging on Saints money line this week. The time has arrived. I risked it with Washington. I said they'll get by in this game. Now I got to start going the other way. Especially because I do think that I lean to the Saints winning this game. I don't see any value on 3. I'm not going to play anything on 3. Because of my futures, I can lay the extra juice on the money line for the Saints. But just look at Tampa's season for a second. Because Washington had a losing record, let's not even count them as a playoff team. Of the 12 wins that Tampa has, 11 were over non-playoff teams or losing teams like Washington. 1, the home win over the Packers. Now it's an impressive one because if you win this game, you're probably going to Lambeau to play a team that you blew out 38-10. I don't know what necessarily happened there. from the Packers. It was Adams' first game back from injury, I think. So he was on the field, but maybe not quite right. That's it. That's the only impressive win. The rest of the teams are not good. You go through the losses. It's 2 to the Saints, 1 to the Bears by 1 in Chicago. We remember Brady holding up the fingers. The 2 to the Saints, a 3-point loss to the Rams at home, a 3-point loss to the Chiefs at home. That was a blowout that they backdoored. I think they were down 17 in the fourth quarter and backdoored the 3.5. It's not encouraging that the Bucs can go on the road and win this game. So that's really my only takeaway on the game itself. I do think that the Saints will win. I don't think Tampa necessarily has it in them. From the props perspective, if Mike Evans is getting shut down by Lattimore, maybe we look to, Brady for some reason has this obsession with Antonio Brown, who is a absolute lunatic, but Brady loves him. Over 4.5 receptions, that seems fair. He seems to almost force the ball to Antonio Brown. So if Evans, who's a good red zone target this season, if he's going to be a little bit covered up, 4.5 receptions, 54.5 yards for Antonio Brown, those seem like good spots, especially if we all like the Saints and think Tampa might be playing from behind in this game.
Yeah, I don't agree with that one. Obviously, you look at who is going to be drawing coverage with Brown. It's probably going to be Janoris Jenkins. He's been kind of hit or miss this year. Don't hate the matchup for Brown. I mean, Brady's going to try to get the ball to him either way, but you look at Jenkins, just under 60% catch rate, 12.6 yards per reception he's allowed on the year. So I don't hate that one. I just worry that Mike Evans, he looked pretty healthy to me, man, last week. And, especially in the red zone, that's going to be Brady's guy. So kind of going to wait on the props on that one. Drew, do you have any closing thoughts on this one before we quickly just do a quick NBA segment?
I think there's probably going to be some live opportunities to come in on this one because it's going to be a competitive game. I think, I think either team down is going to have a chance to come back in this one. The Bucs don't run the ball well enough to play keep away, and the Saints, and the Bucs have enough offensive weapons to pass their way back in. So I think whichever team takes the early lead, it's not crazy to come in on a live side against, looking for a comeback.
All right, so moving over to the NBA, just want to get some of your quick thoughts on this, Drew. Obviously, with COVID and everything, it's been a pretty difficult year. We've seen some, late scratches if it's due to injury or guys going on the health protocol list or whatnot. What's been your overall thoughts here with, trying to cap the NBA season, even this early so far?
I mean, through the first handful of games here, it's very much felt like the preseason. There's been a lot of blowouts. There's been a lot of unpredictability. There's been some very uninspired play from some teams that we expected to contend. I think things will settle down as we get later into January and into February here. But so far, it's been you had to pick your spots very carefully because motivation has been up and down like crazy. Like Denver Dallas is a good game last week where you kind of felt going into that game that the stakes were high. These were two teams expected to compete for the West, and you felt like you were going to get honest efforts out of both of them, and that getting up playing against the Knicks and really not getting up to play some of the teams that really just don't have much of a chance in the Eastern Conference. It's made things look more level than they are. I think as we kind of get into the meat of the season here, I think the cream will rise to the top. I think the trade that the Nets made for James Harden will probably put them into realistic consideration for the Eastern Conference Championship. Obviously, that's not saying a lot. With Kevin Durant, they were already in the conversation, but Durant and Harden on the floor together is going to be really, really tough to defend, even if you're as good a defense as Milwaukee is. I think it's shaping up to where you realistically have 4 contenders in the East right now: Bucks, Nets, Celtics, and the Heat still are real. And depending on matchup there, I can see any of those 4 teams getting to the finals. the West is all about the Lakers. No one's beating the Lakers in the West. It's not close. And realistically, any price in the plus 250 range or better for the Lakers to win the title, you probably just grab it now. I expected them to come out a little slower, not really give you honest effort, and yet they're still just beating the brakes off of teams. This Lakers team is probably winning their second title this year.
I totally agree with the large majority of what you said there. I will say, depending on how Brooklyn gels, like that's scary level Golden State with Durant type of talent. That if you said the Nets beat the Lakers, I don't think that would shock anybody. We just have to see the personalities come together. And I'm not worried. I mean, maybe we see the fat James Harden pictures on Twitter. Maybe he needs to run himself into shape in Brooklyn, but that'll only take a few weeks. We know the relationship with Kevin Durant is good. Those are the two guys. Kyrie's the guy that we need to figure out if he's going to be a piece of this or not. The back end of my days on the Celtics beat were Kyrie's first year here, and I did some locker room stuff with him, and he's like, just overthinks everything.
Sure.
He's not, I don't know. Nobody likes Kyrie right now. The dude's crazy. So I would not be shocked if they move him by the deadline if it doesn't work out over the next month. And all of a sudden it's Harden and Durant in Brooklyn, which would just be kind of hilarious. But from the COVID, tags on games, I think that, like you're saying, blowouts, looking for those is a great piece, and just grabbing a line when guys are ruled out. But for props for me have been the big thing here, because when we have a few guys out, jumping on a player prop is a larger edge in my mind than getting on the game line. It didn't necessarily work out last night. Last night, the Pelicans were without 3 starters. I grabbed Brandon Ingram over 22.5 points. He has 22 with 7 minutes left in the game. Doesn't get there. Tim Hardaway Jr. with all the Mavericks down, grab him over 18.5 points. He finishes at 18. Bad night for it, but it's been working. I guess my last question for you, NBA related. You like the Lakers a lot. I like the Lakers to, I don't know if my favorite bet would be to win it all or to just win the West, just to, the potential of Brooklyn coming out of the East. How close do you think things are in the Eastern Conference between Brooklyn and the 3 other teams that you mentioned? Because I agree that it is the Heat, the Bucks, and the Celtics in there. Give me a break with Philly. The Raptors need to think about making the playoffs to begin with. There's not much else there.
Yeah, no, it's those 4 teams. I mean, the Pacers are going to be in the mix too, and the Sixers are going to be in the mix too, just because of record. But I don't think realistically either of those teams is winning a best of 7 series against the 4 we mentioned. Bucks coaching is a huge problem. They have yet to get over the hump in terms of putting together a playoff rotation, making in-series adjustments that gets them there. So I think it's close because they're the most talented with Giannis, obviously, but. And similarly, the Nets are probably the second most talented with Durant, but Steve Nash certainly doesn't look like he has a very good grasp of what he wants to do with this team from a vision standpoint. So coaching could hold those 2 teams back, which I do think gives a very realistic chance for the Celtics and the Heat to get back into the mix. I mean, there's a talent gap.
Eastern Conference Final.
That's right. There's a talent gap between those 4 teams, the 2 and the 2. But there's a coaching gap as well. And the better coaching is almost certainly Celtics and Heat. Maybe a better coach for a given series is Spoelstra. A better coach for a given game is Stevens. But I think it's pretty close. I don't think the market really reflects kind of how tight the top 4 bunch together in that conference.
All right, that is going to wrap it up for this edition of the Unreasonable Odds podcast. Drew, seriously, thank you so much, man, for coming on the show. Really appreciated you having you on. As I mentioned, follow him on Twitter, whale_capper. And then, of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Deep Dive on YouTube. Look that baby up, get some information. You pretty much say you're daily because you're busting out those videos fairly quickly lately. Kind of.
You can. There's daily content. I'm not always involved, but we're doing stuff. We're doing stuff 3-4 days a week for football at least. Once NFL season rolls, we'll probably start doing some daily NBA. I think, but
so
a
you
lot
can
of content.
get the whole thing going. You watch the Unreasonable Odds, and then you go right over to the deep dive with Drew and the whole cast over there. The whole day is covered. Your whole work day is covered. Get all the information you need for all of your betting needs. For Drew, for Julian, Edlow,
Lamar Jackson odds boost. Go bet Lamar Jackson odds boost. Brought to you by Unreasonable Odds Podcast.
Do it now. There's no reason to not do it unless it's Saturday and it might be gone. So if it's Friday, please go do it. But if you missed it, we're going to be doing these weekly, so don't you worry your pretty little head. For Steve Buchanan, that's me, Julian Edlow. See you guys next week.